On a dimly moonlit night, Calvert rested on the prow of his sloop, the Marigold, watching the horizon for signs of troubled waters. He had learned to trust the subtle cues of the ocean breeze, the faint shift of the skies, never discounting the quiet hints that duppies, restless ghosts of the Caribbean, might be near. The faintest drizzle caressed the deck, lifting a scent of salt and damp wood. Candlelight flickered from a battered lantern, its glow revealing more shadows than shapes. He glanced down at a tobacco pouch around his neck, which hung like a talisman. Within it lay the dried leaves of an herb rumoured to sting a spirit's soul, used by the old Yoruba shamans to keep duppies at bay. For any ordinary sailor, it was nothing but an odd superstition. For Calvert, it was a lifeline. It was said among the scattered villages that Calvert, the spirit hunter, had inherited neither great wealth nor a fine name, but he had a gift for sensing spirits drowned in sorrow or locked in restless rage. From Trinidad to Jamaica and beyond, rumours proliferated that Calvert once looked at a rampaging duppy, laughed, and sent it yowling into the beyond with only a handful of salt and a short chant in patois. The stories had grown their own tall shapes. Some claimed he had an ancient golden knife that never tarnished. Others whispered he was half duppy himself, blessed or cursed with a second sight. Truth be told, Calvert was a fisherman's son who discovered his knack by chance. At the age of 11, he had seen a faint shape looming near his mother's fishing boat. When he pointed, she saw nothing. Yet the next morning, the Loco Bayer woman declared that a malevolent spirit lingered in. It was then everyone realized Calvert was only half living in the physical world. His other senses spanned into the realm of ghosts. As the Marigold nudged forward through swells battered by waves that sparkled under moonlight, Calvert heard a shriek echo across the water. This was no gull crying overhead. He knew those. It was the faint wail of a duppy. Carefully, he reached into the deck's small compartment and pulled out a battered leather-bound grimoire. Its pages crackled with the dampness of sea air. He flipped to a marking scrawled in red ink. His mission for the night. Word had spread that the remote island of Radiance Cave was tormented by a jumbie, one of the many forms duppies could take. Reports described a spectre that turned gentle trade winds into howling gales and lured fishermen to their doom on rocky shores. The villagers prayed daily, lighting small vigil candles at dusk and scattering protective seeds. Yet night after night, the jumbie tore nets and capsized small canoes. Oftentimes, entire families woke to find piles of fish scales at their doorsteps, as though offered in foreboding tribute. Desperate, a letter had been sent to the only man rumoured to be able to stand against such a threat. He closed the notebook. It was a modest living, chasing spirits from island to island. Not many realised that, for Calvert, every new duppy was an echo of the first presence he had ever sensed, a faint shape that had once hovered near his mother's boat. He had been too young to know how to banish it, too frightened to conquer it. That day, the sense of helplessness had never fully dissipated. Over time, he replaced fear with knowledge. He collected chants in Haitian Creole, studied how to weave protective wards with African diaspora traditions, and listened to tales from seafarers about capturing a spirit's name in a conch shell. This was no conjurer's show, but a bone-deep skill shaped by experience and heartbreak. Cautiously, he said a quiet prayer to the horizon, entreating the ancestors for safe passage. As the hours passed, his eyelids grew heavy under the throbbing lull of the sea. Half drifting into a doze, he was jerked awake by a sudden jolt that shook the deck. Lightning forked above, an unannounced storm crashing in. The water churned, thick clouds darkened the moon, and a hiss of wind snatched the lantern flame, plunging him into gloom. Calvert stood, gripping the helm tightly. The sea seemed to groan around him, a low lament. A swirl of blackness skimmed across the surface of a wave, gone almost before he could blink. But Calvert felt the cold presence. Heart pounding, he steadied the Marigold with one hand while reaching with the other for his salted net. The net was woven with threads, soaked in a brew of holy water, sweetgrass, and sour orange peel, all rumoured to hamper a duppy's escape once cornered. There it was again, a swirl of shadow across the waves faster than any tangible creature. Lightning cast a harsh glow, making the ocean shimmer like mercury. Then he saw it clearly, a long-limbed silhouette, face half covered by swirling spectral seaweed, eyes glowing a faint green. The shape dove beneath the surface, leaving a trail of luminous wisps. A jumbie indeed, possibly the very one the Radiance Cave villagers feared, or some lesser minion drawn by the storm. Calvert braced himself. The sloop pitched, torrential rains pounded the deck and thunder rolled. The spirit re-emerged on the starboard side, mocking him with hollow laughter. He flung the enchanted net. It caught the wind, twisting in the gale, but the spirit vanished again. Only the thrash of waves and the crack of thunder remained. Hours later, the storm raged itself into exhaustion and gave way to a leaden dawn. Calvert's efforts to capture the jumbie through the night had failed, as each time he cast his net or recited a chant, the spirit slipped into the current. With a tired sigh, he realized the chase might last until he reached Radiance Quay. This was not just a random wandering spirit out at sea. It was cunning enough or powerful enough to evade him. He washed the salt from his eyes, took a quick pull of fresh water, and guided the marigold onward. They would see who outlasted whom. By the time he arrived at Radiance Quay, the early morning sun beamed on the pastel-coloured huts that curved along a hillside. Many perched on stilts to catch the sea breeze. The shoreline was nearly empty. One fisherman mended his net near a giant coconut tree, and a few women gathered driftwood just above the tide line. They smiled wearily when they recognized Calvert's sloop rolling gently onto the sand. He hopped off, anchored the boat, and trudged across the damp beach, net slung over one shoulder and his grimoire clutched in a waterproof pouch. The fisherman, a gaunt man with wiry arms, beckoned in greeting. "You must be the spirit hunter," he said, pulling aside a chunk of net still strewn with fish bones. "We prayed you could come. The jumbie grows bolder, and the old wards we set up don't hold it off. Last night, it even tried to enter the village. We found footprints in the sand that led nowhere." Calvert nodded. "I felt its presence at sea. It has cunning, but fear not. I've come prepared." He studied the fisherman's tired gaze. "Where can I find the one who sent for me?" "In the big hut near the papaya grove. She's our eldest, Mama Ruby." The fisherman glanced nervously toward the slope. "She knows these spirits well. Her grandmother was an Abea woman. She can instruct you better than I can." Calvert thanked him, carefully navigating the narrow sandy paths through the coconut palms, plantains, and bright hibiscus. Some huts appeared deserted, shutters closed tight despite the heat. Others had intricate talismans tied with dried vines and shells over their doorways. Whispers and stares followed him. Children who had heard legends and old folks who recognized the gravity of his mission. At last, he found Mama Ruby's hut. Bright turquoise paint peeled from the walls, revealing a layer of older paint beneath. A low porch held a single rocking chair draped in battered cloth. Inside, Mama Ruby sat hunched beside a small altar where half-melted candles flickered and a clay bowl of smouldering incense filled the air with hints of frankincense and rosemary. She groaned as she rose to meet Calvert, her eyes sunken but sharp. She beckoned him forward with a bony finger. "You carry the mark of a man who can see across veils," she said, scanning his face. "My mother taught me to read that look." "So you are the hunter. Good." Her breath rattled. "Something stirs the Duppies here. At night they roam like wolves, scratching at doors, screaming through fishermen's nets. I fear a greater force is at work." Calvert explained his encounter the previous night, describing how the jumbie slipped from his net with effortless ease. Mama Ruby listened, stirring her incense bowl thoughtfully. "That petty spirit has tasted something," she said. "An offering, maybe, or an old bone for it to gnaw. You see, Duppies don't merely haunt mindlessly. They're drawn to places steeped in powerful memories or unquiet dead. This island, Radiance Cay, once held a fortune in sugarcane. Many enslaved souls toiled here, died in darkness. Their unrest lingers. Our Jumbie might be feeding on that bitterness. She turned, rummaging through a worn trunk, pulling out a small gourd carved with symbols. "Drink each day from this," she said, passing it to Calvert. The faint smell of aged rum and star anise rose from the mouth of the gourd. "It has protective power. At night, walk the old cane fields, listen for chanting or drums in the distance. That's where you'll find the spirit's lair." Calvert accepted the gourd, bowing his head in gratitude. "I'll do as you say," he replied, "though I suspect that the spirit at sea, the one heading here, is only the start. Its presence is too strong to be just a random duppy." That evening, as dusk settled into shadows, Calvert set out from the village. He wore his net as a sash across his chest. He had packed salt, ground pepper, a small bell, and a pouch of herbal powders. Before leaving, he took a sip from the gourd. The taste burnt with an odd mix of rum, onion, and something else he couldn't name, but a tingle tinged his lips, as though forging an invisible shield around him. Guided by Mama Ruby's directions, he located the old cane fields in the island's interior. Weeds had overrun the once prized plants, and broken wooden fences jutted from the ground like splintered bones. The moon peeked through tattered clouds, illuminating a dirt path that wound between derelict sugar vats and collapsed storage sheds. A hush clung to the air, thick and uneasy, as if some collective sorrow weighed on the earth itself. Rustling emerged behind him. He froze, pressing a bit of pepper and salt between the tips of his fingers. The moonlight revealed a fleeting shape glowing at the edge of the cane rows. It moved just beyond clear sight, weaving among the stalks. Calvert ventured closer, hearing a low, mournful melody drifting through the dark. It wasn't the raucous cackle of the Jumbie he had encountered at sea. This voice sounded more resigned. Something about it tugged at Calvert's conscience. He putted the cane stalks. His heart nearly jumped when he beheld a figure in tattered cloth with hollow eyes pressed into a gaunt face. The figure's mouth hung slack, yet in the distance, the sorrow-laden melody continued. The figure locked eyes with him. Its lips didn't move, but Calvert heard words in his mind, as though whispered through a shell. "Help us find rest." Spirits of the enslaved? He had read about them. Some lingered near their unmarked graves, unable to cross over, anger or unhealed grief binding them to the land. Calvert set down his net, removing a small clay lamp from his bag. He lit the wick and placed it on the ground. The glow revealed more shapes drifting behind the first. Startled, he inhaled sharply. They hovered in ragged lines, some with visible shackles, others with trunk-lashed scars across translucent skin. A chorus of them stared at the lamp, silent as stone. Calvert felt sympathy welling inside him. He knelt on the overgrown path. "I'll help," he whispered, forging a vow. "I'll lay you to rest, but first I must rid this place of the Jumbie that torments you." The spirits merely watched, though their presence exuded a collective ache that weighed in the night air. Slowly they began receding into the drifting shadow. Calvert stood, heart heavy. Were these restless souls fueling the Jumbie's power? Possibly. The malignant spirit might be feeding on the residual anger, twisting it into storms, tampering with fishermen's nets, maybe even enchanting the sea. Calvert shook his head. One by one, the pieces of the puzzle took shape. He had to find and confront the Jumbie's lair, perhaps an ancestral burial ground or a site of deep trauma. He trudged deeper into the field. Half-buried rails told him the old sugarcane factory was nearby. Eventually, he reached a clearing ringed by rotting wooden buildings. A rusted plough lay on its side. Beyond that, a stone well rose from the ground. The darkness thickened here, shadows curling unnaturally against the stone. A faint growl emanated from the well's depths. The hair on Calvert's arms prickled. Slowly, he circled, searching for signs of the jumbie. The air became suddenly frigid. Gathering his courage, he rang the small bell, reciting a Haitian chant learnt from an elderly priestess. Esprima la ra, esprit lime meni, kit la yon vini, kit pensanwale. The wind howled, scattering cane leaves in a spiral around him. A shape rose from the mouth of the well, a mangled figure, twisting and turning. The same glowing green eyes from the storm stared back. Its seaweed hair dripped briny water, and its bony arms ended in hooked talons. This time, it did not fade away, but hovered, overshadowing him with its ghostly form. Lightning, though there was no storm, danced along the edge of the spirit's aura. Calvert stood his ground, net in hand. With a flourish, he tossed the net upward, chanting in a low, commanding tone, accompanied by fluid gestures that stirred the specialized wards woven into its threads. The net glowed momentarily, capturing the jumbie's silhouette before it hissed and twisted out of reach, severing a corner of the net in the process. The net's edges sizzled as if burned by acid. Calvert clenched his jaw. Striving for calm, he reached into his pouch for salt. He flicked 3 handfuls at the spirit, each grain blazing white in mid-air. The jumbie shrieked. Its laugh was like nails on slate. In the distance, the enslaved spirits moaned, amplifying the lament that filled the night. The jumbie swiped with a claw, stirring a torrent of wind that knocked Calvert off his feet. He rolled, inhaling dust. The net slipped from his grasp. Groaning, he scrambled upright. Spots danced before his eyes, but he steadied himself with the memory of Mama Ruby's instructions. It has cunning and draws upon the land sorrow. She had told him to look for a symbol of the jumbie's anchor, an object or place that bound the spirit here. Calvert's gaze landed on the old well. It seemed steeped in malevolence, no doubt a gateway of sorts. If the jumbie's anchor lay within, he had to break it. He edged toward the well, weaving around the jumbie's swipes. Thunder boomed and the spirit soared overhead, swirling black mist into the air. Eventually, with great care, Calvert reached the side of the well. Looking over the rim, he saw pitch darkness, but also sensed a vile humming. Something was down there. An item or remains that imprisoned the unquiet ghosts. With trembling resolve, he lit a second clay lamp and dropped it carefully inside. Its faint glow illuminated the well's water, thick with algae and debris. Floating near the surface was a small, wooden, fetish doll, riddled with nails, its eyes carved from 2 shards of obsidian. Spiral symbols were painted around its chest, reminiscent of an ancient West African sigil known to trap wandering souls. "You!" the jumbie bellowed, voice echoing as if from deep underground, though the shape hovered above. "You cannot take what is mine." Another windgust knocked the lamp sideways, dousing its flame, yet Calvert had seen enough to gauge the target. That doll was key. Perhaps the duppy imprisoned the enslaved spirits inside it, siphoning their despair to strengthen itself. Now, the jumbie dived toward Calvert, teeth bared in a feral snarl. Instead of retreating, he leapt onto the well's edge and kicked off, plunging feet first into the darkness. The frigid water engulfed him, his heart hammering. He felt weeds and debris cling to his arms as he sank. For a terrifying moment, no light guided him. Then he forced himself to open his eyes under the murky water. A faint glow from above revealed the silhouette of the fetish doll bobbing near the surface. He grabbed it. The instant his fingers touched the cursed wood, a wave of agony crashed into his senses. Cries of anguish, shrieks of horror. The spirits bound within the doll clamored for release. He kicked to the surface, gasping for air. Lightning lit the mouth of the well where the jumbie hovered, howling in savage fury. Calvert's voice shook as he croaked out another chant, brandishing the doll. "By the ancestors' tears and the living's hope, break this chain and free these souls." He crushed the fetish doll against the well's stone rim, snapping its embedded nails. A surge of unnatural energy flared. The jumbie screeched as if mortally wounded. It plummeted toward him, ghostly talons outstretched. With one final push, Calvert tore the doll in two, letting the water soak through its broken halves. A deafening hush followed, broken only by a strange collective breath from the darkness. Then a swirl of bluish-white lights danced around the well. The enslaved spirits, loosed at last, rose in a spiral of shimmering silhouettes. Their sorrow rippled outward in a wave, then dissolved like a morning mist. The Jumbie, robbed of its power source, thrashed and shriveled. Its form sagged. The emerald eyes flickered once, then vanished into the netherworld with a final, pathetic wail. Coughing and aching from scrapes and bruises, Calvert clung to the well's rim. One by one, the freed spirits drifted upward, their translucence shining under the moon. Some wore faint smiles, others appeared thoughtful, as if uncertain how to embrace this release. Without the fettered anchor fueling them, they had no reason to linger. In hushed awe, Calvert watched them rise into the star-laid sky. Relief spread through him. He had kept his vow. Radiant's key would be at peace. He trudged back through the cane fields, drenched and exhausted. The villagers who found him along the path rushed to his aid. Mama Ruby was among them, face lined with worry that broke into a tired grin. "You did it," she breathed. Under her direction, they guided him to her hut. She poured him a cup of hot, sweet tea with ginger and bathed a wound on his arm. "Your net is charred in places," she said, picking up the tattered remains he had salvaged, "but your heart is strong." "Our island owes you a debt." Calvert offered a faint smile between sips of tea. "The Jumbie is gone. But we must never forget the spirits that were trapped. Their suffering fed its power." He paused. "They have found some peace, at last." In the following days, the villagers performed a ceremony of thanks. They gathered at sunrise on the beach, dancing and singing in gratitude to the ancestors, to the land, and to the ocean that gave them life. Calvert, though not a devout man, joined in the ritual. Spirals of incense smoke rose beneath golden palm trees, and the rhythmic beat of drums resonated across the sands. Even the air felt lighter, as if the island shook off a heavy shroud. An old fisherman approached him when the ceremony ended. "Thank you, Spirit Hunter. We have never known a man to stand so firm against such evil. Are we free now?" Calvert nodded, gazing out toward the bright horizon. "This duppy is gone, the anchor destroyed. Still, spirits roam the islands, drawn by sorrow and old wounds. Each place must guard itself with respect and memory. The dead deserve reverence." Mama Ruby handed Calvert a small token, a conch shell etched with protective symbols. "Should that Jumbie ever reform or any other duppy test your will, blow this shell. The ancestors will hear you. Perhaps they will come to your aid." With quiet thanks, Calvert secured the shell in his pouch. Then came the time for him to depart. The villagers lined the shore to wave him off. Some offered small gifts of fruit, dried fish, or woven cloth. Children who had heard rumors of the spirit hunter giggled in excitement as he climbed back onto the marigold. Likewise, many older folk closed their eyes in prayer, wishing him calm seas and untroubled nights. At the helm of his boat, Calvert raised one sail, letting the Caribbean wind catch it. The marigold slid away from Radiant's Key, across a tranquil blue that shimmered like a polished gem. He breathed deeply, savoring the momentary peace. Ever watchful, though, he knew mischief and sorrow could conjure a duppy on any island where hearts carried grudges. Among the archipelago, centuries of painful history lingered like footprints in the sand. He would remain vigilant, traveling the seas to answer when the living pleaded for release from the dead. As he navigated a gentle current, he glanced over his shoulder at the receding shore, recalling the swirl of freed souls. Perhaps in giving them a final rest, he had also laid to rest a piece of his own lingering guilt from childhood. The memory of that first spirit he had sensed near his mother's boat felt less haunting now, more a guiding hand than a festering regret. Without doubt, there would be more battles ahead, yet each small victory reminded him that hope still glowed in the darkest corners, where sorrow once cast shadow upon shadow. He gripped the wheel, reassured by the conch shell Mama Ruby had given him. A brief hush seemed to envelop him, and in that silence, he felt the brush of ancestral spirits, watchful but kind. He closed his eyes, exhaling the tension he had borne for days. When he reopened them, the horizon stretched wide and boundless, an open invitation to continue his quest. On distant shores, other duppies might stir, and he would be there to face them. Noble or not, his calling gave peace to those in need, both living and dead. Thus, Calvert, the spirit hunter, guided the marigold toward the next island, guided by the subtle tide where the living and the departed shared the same deep waters. On these seas, the line between mortal and spirit could vanish as swiftly as shifting moonlight. Calvert would sail ever onward, a guardian against restless ghosts who roamed the Caribbean nights, preserving the fragile peace woven from courage, memory, and the unbreakable bond of ancestors.